three different levels of Kedusha, what we'll call Gufa Kedusha. So the Sefer Torah itself, Tefillin, Mezuzahs, the Stam, something which has the parchment with the Torah, that is Gufa Kedusha. Tashmishi Kedusha is generally assumed as, let's say, the mantle on the Sefer Torah, something which comes in direct contact with the Gufa Kedusha, the batim on the Tefillin, the mantle on the Sefer Torah, etc. That's something known as Tashmishi Kedusha. And then there's, if it goes to the next step, for instance, let's say you only put a Torah with its cover on this table, this already would be a Tashmish to Tashmish. It wouldn't be a Tashmishi Kedusha anymore. Or Tashmishi Mitzvah is something like Lulav, Esrog, Shofar, that Bisman Mitzvasa, during the time you do the mitzvah, it has Kedusha, but once the mitzvah is over, so then in theory you can nizrakin, you could throw it in the garbage. Of course the Tshuvas Harash will point out that when you do it, you should do it derakava, you shouldn't just throw it in together literally with the garbage, wrap it up and put it into its own container compartment. But strictly speaking, Tashmishi Mitzvah Nizrakim, you have a question?
The batim aren't Gufa Kol Mitzvah? I mean,
I'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'll get to that shortly. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara tells us that Tashmishi Kedusha Nigvarim, Tashmishi Mitzvah Nizrakin, yeah?
So if you read the Torah on the tablecloth one time, is that Tashmishi Kedusha?
Right, so one time, so they already discussed maybe it has to be more kavua.
Okay.
You know, it's what it's generally used for one time, so perhaps it wouldn't take on. I guess Mo has to be careful.
But one time perhaps could be if you're miyachid that tablecloth for the Torah. Even if you only did it one time, because you.
If you were miyachid, yeah, but
then that gives it that special.
No, right, but here I'm talking. Right, that's true. But I thought you meant coincidentally, if you happen to put it on something you really don't want to, something you specifically don't want to miyachid, and just happen to do it, then the post can say it has to be more kavua.
Kavanah shalom miyachid. Because it may not be like mahudr for it, it may not be appropriate, but you have nothing else, so you take this table, and then after the table will be used for something, or even a bed sheet, or you have nothing, a clean bed sheet, but you have nothing, but you use it, there's a b'diavad, so it doesn't have there's no connection to the table.
Correct. So there's an interesting discussion in the Gemara in Baba Basra and in Yerushalmi. We learned last week Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchos. There's a whole discussion in the Gemara, whatever happened to the Shivrei Luchos? Whatever happened to the broken Luchos? Not where they are now, that's a separate historical discussion, but what happened to them, the B'Shas Ma'aseh, after they were broken, what happened to them? So it seems to be 2 days in the Bavli, the Yerushalmi, whether the Shivrei Luchos were put into their own Aron Kodesh, their own ark, or they were put together with we know later on Moshe came down with the Luchos Shniyos, and it was kept together with the Luchos Shniyos. So it's 2 days in the Gemara on whether they had their own Aron or not. So the Binyan Siyan asks, my nafkamina. What's the nafkamina to us? It's a nice historical discussion where would they put them, but the Gemara is usually interested in halach l'mais and not a one-time shot that's not relevant to us. Like for instance, the Gemara in Chulin and Dav Yud Zayin. The Gemara over there is discussing the different types of shchita, speaking of kashrus, the different types of shchita that was warranted. So in the Midbar, they had kosher meat. It wasn't the same status it wasn't the same type of shchita that was necessary. When the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael, so then the laws of shchita, the way we know it applied. But in the Midbar, a discussion what they did, basa nechira, whether they did nothing, they did a little bit, but whatever they did, it was good enough, it was kosher in the Midbar, but when they entered Eretz Yisrael, they had to do a kosher shchita.
Why not in the Midbar? He already said, Zvach l'kasher tzili sicha, says in the Yisrael. And Rashi says, this Allah l'moshe misina, this is, you shall slaughter as I commanded you. So that tzivui, that lashon came out in Vayikra, in the Midbar, it was uttered there. So that makes it incumbent upon them. How do you detract from that, not doing it the exact way with the 5 different things that make it an animal trait in the terms of shechita, etc. If it says it in the Torah, and they were living the Torah, they were given that at that time. Unless you follow the Shitas of Ramban, that it's no chalos of mitzvahs and chutzpah still.
Yeah, but that's separate. The Gemara, because Gemara Chulin goes to the Gemara says it already. I'm not saying my own finish.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were.
No, the Gemara Chulin. I'm saying it's a good question in terms of the details of what they did, but it's a good question why they didn't do regular shechita. Maybe they couldn't, but that's the Gemara. So my point I'm bringing it up here is because to the question the Gemara asks is a very interesting question. Is what happened if they had leftover basa and nechira? What happens if they had leftover meat from the midbar and now they brought it into Eretz Yisrael? Now the new laws of shechita. I guess if a butcher shop is kosher with one hashgacha, then they change hashgachas. You apply the grandfather clause. But seriously, the midbar. Were they permitted to eat the basa and nechira in it once they entered Eretz Yisrael?
What does that mean,
Nechira, they just made different holes in different places. Or it wasn't the full whole 9 yards.
Plunging a knife into it.
Right. Some say maybe in the velo was okay. However, wasn't the level of kashrus necessary. The Gemara leaves it at teku. Gemara doesn't answer it. So the Rush asks, who cares? What is the Gemara draying us a cup about? Do we have any bas and nechira today? You mean during the time? Then we could start discussing the question. Like he's asking me some hypothetical from years ago. The Gemara, so the Rush happens to come up with why it is a l'maisa, not the bas and nechira, but the principle, and he does apply it to a loch l'maisa, and that's a separate share. But the point being is, with the Gemara,
I don't understand the question. The Gemara discusses lots of things that are not practical.
The principle should come out, and you have to learn. In other words, when the Gemara is giving,
the Gemara discusses meat from the Shiva Amami if you find meat in the
kadra the chazeri, but that's the same Gemara over there.
So how is that practical?
No, in fact, one of the generals in Eretz Yisrael he was a character. When he went into Lebanon, he said kadra the chazeri. Now we don't have to eat kosher. So again, you have to know what the halachas are, whether it's a dafka fighting a war to fight get Eretz Yisrael. There is in theory it could be halacha l'maisa in terms of you're fighting a war. That's what that's what the heter in Dvarim is when they mulayim batim kol tuv.
So you're saying everything in Shas has a practical application?
No, I hear your question. That is the Rush's assumption. I agree. You might be hard pressed I wouldn't have made that assumption up on my own. I wouldn't necessarily thought that. But I'm saying that the Russians, I guess, obviously it doesn't necessarily mean every Agada said that, but I guess whatever he limits his call to, but he assumes it's a valid question to ask. That's why it's right. So I just still thought of the Rush. So I'm thinking over here. So why is it Nogea to us? What happens to Shivrei Luchas? Again, so of course it is. I'm just going to have an answer. I am going to have a nafkamina. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Going back to the bas nechira, plunging the knife into it. So maybe that was something in the midbar as Harashah, B'diavad. So maybe this is applicable to us. Let's say a person's in a certain situation where they don't have a knife and they can't get by, so they may not have to do tshuva if they do this because they can rely upon something when there's a B'diavad situation, like in the midbar. Whatever heter they had in the midbar could perhaps have its application to them, even though the Torah there's a chalos of the Torah once they entered Eretz Yisrael and have to shlit and mamish. But because in the midbar they plunged the knife into the animals, and it was a b'diavad situation. So a person in a b'diavad situation, when it's harosha and they need to have the meat for it to exist, and there's no real chalif that they can use, then they do it. They don't have to worry about doing tshuva, and it's not metamtem esalev, it's not treifa. There's implications of spiritual implications also.
I agree with you in principle. The application, I don't think it's true here because no one. But that there is. You have to know if it's.
The problem is it really that it was a b'diavad in the midbar, or wasn't it that the chiyuv?
You're right. Kasha tzachiyuv didn't be right because that gets into kasha tzivisiv, but they chayiv and shchita. They didn't do the smasher from there. That didn't really become applicable. You're right. If you assume it was good that shchita you were chayiv, and then we could. But I was assuming the other way. So, but the principle's true. But I don't know if the application's here. So getting back to the binyan siyan says ma'inaf kamina.
Shivrei Luchos.
Yeah, the Shivrei Luchos. And in fact, we all know that's how That's how the Torah ends. Re'enei Kol Yisrael, the way Rashi learns at the end of the Chumash. Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchos, Re'enei Kol Yisrael. What kind of way is that to end the Torah? With the breaking of the luchos. There's a Chasam Sofer, Reb Gifter, others who point out that it shows that the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu's whole life, when he came to the Sneh, so Sneh, the Eben Ezraite Sneh equals Sinai. That his whole mission was to get the Torah and Har Sinai and give it to the Jewish people. Imagine coming down and seeing the Cheda Ego, and then taking this his life's work and just throwing it down and breaking it. So the greatest of Moshe Rabbeinu in terms of Aliyah B'De'emes is willing to even destroy. Imagine you're working at a PhD, it's 100-page thesis, and let's say you know a couple of things that really aren't true, but no one else doesn't have an idea. Only you know the topic. So you know, big deal. So this shows it's not true, but no one's going to know. It's very hard for someone to go ahead and just go ahead and volunteer. The Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was willing to destroy. He was willing to destroy his whole life's work for the sake of...
We still have Torah even if there's Shivri Luchos.
Exactly, but he didn't know that
he went 40 days and 40 nights, which was Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. And then even if the Shivri Luchos are broken, he still has Torah Shabbat Peh. But because he loves Klal Yisrael, because if you'd have the Luchos that says you can't do idolatry, and it would be in front of them, so he actually saved them by breaking in front of them. The Shteit Geschriben, it says you can't do Avodah Zarah. He broke it, so then he had the kiyum of Klal Yisrael because of his great love for Klal Yisrael.
Right.
He could still teach them Torah, even though he had.
So the bottom line is. So even though he didn't know he was going to get a second luchos, it would have been Torah, but he went to have the second luchos, and there were differences between the first luchos were from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, etc. So actually, it reminds me of a comic strip I saw many years ago, and it must have been in Hebrew. That's the way I remember it. There was a story you could put in any place, but basically the Ministry of Education was going around checking different schools in terms of heard that the education isn't that great, and they were going around just doing a regular ministry. You could put that in North America also. I'm not picking on Israel. That's happened. That's the way I saw the comic strip. So they say the way it goes is this minister walks into I guess it's a day school. He walks in and sees a nice kid. We'll call him Chaim Yanko, standing in the hallway. So he walks over to the kid and says, "Yeled, Mishi Beres Haluchos." Child, who broke the luchos? So the kid sees a stranger. He doesn't know he's scared. He's only like 10, 11. He says, Lo ani, lo ani. I didn't do it. So he says, okay, I heard they don't know anything, but they don't know that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. This is crazy. So he runs to the teacher's Rabbi, or teacher, or whatever it might have been. And he says, you know what? I met Chaim Yankel in the hallway. I asked him who broke the luchos. And he says he didn't do it. So the teacher looks at this guy and says, you know, I know Chaim Yankel for like 8, 10 years. I know the family. He comes from a very honest family. If he said he didn't break the luchos, we can believe him. So he said, it's one thing the kids don't know anything, but the rebbeim or the teachers don't. So he starts running to the principal's office and says, you know what? I'm going to make a scandal, I'm going to put it into the papers, and the principal's getting fed up with it. He says, just tell me how much they cost, I'll pay you in So whatever happened with the Shivrei Lucha, so we'll see. So we'll see, the Binyan Sin is going to give us a nafkamina shortly. That's why we have to go through Tashmishi Kedusha and Tashmishi Mitzvah before I get to the nafkamina. So we pointed out, Tashmishi Kedusha Nigvarim, Tashmishi Mitzvah Nizrakim. So getting to the Tefillin. So there's actually a machloket Rashi and Tosfos. Let's say, what's the status of the Tefillin bag? The Tefillin zaka, could you throw it out? Does it have to be buried? So Tosfos seems to say that it's only Tashmishi Mitzvah. That what's the Kedusha? The Kedusha is the cloth inside. That touched the bottom, so the bottom are Tashmishi Kedusha, but only Tashmishi Kedusha is touching the Tefillin bag, so B'yikra did, it should be Tashmish, and therefore you should be able to throw it out. However, Rashi says no. Rashi says the Ritzuas themselves, and maybe you argue the bottom also, the same way, the Ritzuas themselves has letters on it. You have the Shin, the Daled. So Rashi claims the Ritzuas and perhaps the Batim as well, those are Gufa Kedusha. They're not Tashmishi Kedusha. They have the Shem Hashem, they have the Osios, and therefore the Tefillin bag has the status of Tashmishi Kedusha. So we're machmir like Rashi.
Only because there's letters on it?
No, the letter, either the Batim, because he's saying where's the Kedusha
It
comes
has to be made l'shem mitzvah.
No, all of
It's
that.
not puzzle. If the batim are no good, they're not. It's not just a sack. Like
No.
it's a
No,
tefillin
I'm
bag.
saying like a Torah. Obviously, I'm saying it has to be written.
They're not black. You're not
The
supposed to.
might be Tashmishi mitzvah.
What's that?
The bottom might just be like a lulav. It might be like a lulav or like a nesra. There's only Tashmishi mitzvah. In other words, the fact, what's the kedusha of the bottom comes from the fact that it's used for a mitzvah.
Okay.
Right, so we usually put,
then it would be
we
Tashmishi
put the bottom. We have our own. We have our tefillin boxes. We put them into. The boxes are going into the tefillin covers. So then when we're talking about the tefillin covers is going in. So therefore, that's why the tefillin bag should be only a tashmish. The bottom themselves would be either gufa kedusha or tashmishi kedusha. So even if they're gufa kedusha, if we assume that the boxes themselves are blue, but unless you put tefillin in, most people have those tefillin boxes you put in. So those are only tashmish to tashmish. So Rashi's Kiddush is, even if you put the tefillin in their own tefillin boxes, the tefillin bag would still be a tashmish kedusha because the ritzuas themselves, the letters would make them we're not arguing on the bottom are, but we put them in.
So Rashi's saying the ritzuas are gufa kedusha.
Yeah, and therefore the tefillin.
Assuming the batim too.
Right. No,
It's not.
certainly the bottom.
And the not
Yeah.
here.
Right.
So why does it come to the letters if it's gufa kedusha?
No, because
That's what makes it gufa kedusha.
That's what we'll get to. What makes something
I'm just saying,
that will be that
there's
will
bigger reasons for
but
doing
it will-
gufa kedusha.
Yeah. No, obviously you have to do it everything with Shema, but we'll see. I'll get to the Gemara doesn't spell out why. I'll explain what gives it the gufa kedusha in a couple of minutes. So another example would be with the mezuzah. So the mezuzah itself is the cloth. So that itself obviously is a gufa kedusha. So usually there's a saran wrap which worth about 10 cents or 20 cents. You wrap up the mezuzah in a saran wrap. So clearly the saran wrap is Tashmishi Kedusha. Perhaps we'll get into, perhaps not, but at least one could entertain maybe the $5,000 mezuzah cover, that you could throw in the garbage. But you can't throw it in saran wrap, that has to be... We'll give another reason perhaps why the mezuzah cover should also be put into...
You have to what happens if you designate it Shalom Hashem Kedusha? So you think just because it's touching that makes it into something very special?
I mean, you think it may have used it one time, you can't just leave, you can't designate it and have it, it's like you're saying, I'm using this mantle for a Sefer Torah, but I don't, yeah.
Shelas and Shuvas Devar Yechesko, where at the time of the printing press, so if you put too much ink on, you'll be Mocha Shem Hashem. So there was you had in mind Shalom L'Shem Kedusha Filu when they write something. So you write something Shalom L'Shem Kedusha. Let's say in a blackboard, it could even be erased because you have Shalom L'Shem Kedusha. So that may have this.
Yeah, but you're also right. They talk about.
I did that many years ago from David Feinstein, but afterwards.
Yeah, it's a whole discussion with the newspapers in terms of. There's a discussion in terms of
Yale
what
University,
if you're only doing it, if you're only printing it for a certain time. But here, the tefillin, this is something different here.
You know that, right? You're a historian. What do you call it?
What's that? I never heard the story. No.
You're a historian.
Oh,
Like your album.
Oh,
Yale
sorry.
University, Yud K Vav K. So New York Times, you have to cut it out. Can you throw it away? Can you just wrap it up? What do you have to do with it? That's all. So I'm trying to say, the one who made it didn't Shalom L'Shem Kedusha.
What about on the U.S. currency?
In God we trust.
That was the
My cousin
that was
Silverman said God is the name of is one of the God is one of the names.
There was an article in Jerusalem Post a long time ago. That was the discussion. Are you allowed to bring the U.S. currency into the bathroom? Maybe the conclusion would be are you allowed to take it out? But that's a separate here in terms of. But it has to get into your question in terms of whether who's doing it. we know the government, you know, the U.S. government workers, we know that they don't have any kavanah when they're working, so we don't have to worry. But that's a separate share. Being an American, I can say that.
May not be the same. You can have now we have 40 million fundamentalist Christians. He says, I'm printing money with God's name on it. I'm making this. This is for the greater glory of God. We have a country that has God on our money. And he hits the button and he makes it. And the Eno Yehudi makes it.
Yeah. The problem with
because what is he thinking of?
The problem with the Vodasar, we have to burn your money.
Right, so therefore, that's the Saran wrap is definitely Tashmishi Kedusha. We'll see, give another reason why the mezuzah cup you'll probably have to bury as well. What's the status of the Aron Kodesh? The Aron Kodesh in Shul, what's the status? So I would have said al pi svara that our Aron Kodesh should only be a tashmish to tashmish, because you put the Torah is never actually touching the Aron Kodesh inside; it's always in a mantle wrapped up. Yet the Gemara Megillah tells us otherwise. The Gemara Megillah Adaf Chav Ches tells us that the Aron Kodesh has the status of Tashmishi Kedusha. The question is why? Why should the Aron Kodesh have a status of Tashmishi Kedusha? So there's an interesting Karban Nesanel, which I like the best, but no one accepts him la halacha. But I'll tell you, but al pi svara, he says as a good svara. So the Karban Nesanel writes, he says inachinami, the halacha changed. Bizman HaMishnah Gemara, it was Tashmishi Kedusha. Now it's Tashmishi Mitzvah. What do you mean the halacha changed? I thought Taryag mitzvahs are eternal. So I'm asked that all the time. Does Jewish law change? So I always ask the person.
Situation change.
I always ask the person, what do you mean does Jewish law change? If you mean, if someone asks me the same question now, and they asked me 200 years ago, I might give a different answer to it. So in that sense it could change, and maybe 200 years from now as well. But if you tell me, if you ask me about the principles given to Moshe Rabbeinu Har Sinai, that never changes. The principles don't change, but the Torah, the halakha is dynamic. You take the principles and you apply them to the situation, and sometimes we know we have different principles, and you take the principle and apply it, and you could get a different answer. So the Karban Nesanel says here as well, he says, why does the Gemara call them Tashmishi Kedusha? Because Bizman HaGemara and Bizman HaMishnah, they didn't live in affluent North America, where many shuls have many Sifrei Torah, and they have many mandlach. In fact, they even have extra ones. They can't wait to put new ones on when they start ripping. But Bizman HaMishnah and the Gemara, he claims that they didn't have. They put the Sefer Torah Arum. They put the Sefer Torah, whichever or many they had, a couple of them. They didn't have enough mantle, so they left the mantle out, and they put them whenever they took a Sefer Torah out. Whichever one, I guess they had a couple of ones to use. If they only had one, they might as well cover it. So apparently they had a couple and they only had one cover. So whichever one they decided to take out, or whatever Yontiv it was, they left the system, they left the Gabbai worked it. So they put, so he says, they used to put it Sefer Torah in the Aron Kodesh, Arum. So therefore, that's why it's Tashmishi Kedusha. But Bizman Hazeh, the Aron Kodesh is only a Tashmish to Tashmish. That's the psak of the Karban Nesanel, very compelling and very cogent, yet none of the posts can bring them down. So therefore it forces me to we have to come up with another answer there, because the simple answer would be like the Karban Nesanel. You're right, it's not Tashmishi Kedusha, and then according to the Karban Nesanel, at least in theory, one will be able to throw out, it's a major shayla halacha, could you throw out the Aron Kodesh? Assuming you're rebuilding, restructuring, if you assume it's Tashmish to Tashmish, you could throw it in the garbage. Save you a lot of money. But if I'm not sure which one's cheaper, or if it's Tashmishi Kedusha, so then you'd have to bury it. So according to the Karban Nesanel, he says it's no longer Tashmishi, but we passed it against the Karban Nesanel. It is Tash, so why is it? If that's what the post can bring down. There's another reason how something gets...
It's the same way, let's say a Beis Akisa is something that you can't really study Torah or things like that. When you put the Sefer Torah, it's the house of it. So it has a special, it's a special room for it. It's the same, even more than, let's say, even a Beis Medrash has a sense of Kedusha to it. So because it's enveloping it, and it's not, it's usually in a regular case, Tashmishi to Tashmishi it's only Tashmishi to Tashmishi, but here it's a housing of it, so it becomes, you're living in that house, you are the resident, and you're not removed from the walls of the house.
We'll see, along, housing actually might make it worse, but actually along the lines what the poskim say is that the Aron Kodesh is different, is because it's built for the purpose of what covered Torah. Like for instance, let's say the breastplates on it or the silver you put on top. What's the status of that? That never comes in direct contact with the Sefer Torah. So the Poskim say it all has the status of Tashmishi Kedusha.
And covered HaTorah.
Anything done will cover Torah, so therefore it has the status of Tashmishi Kedusha. So the Poskim write the Aron Kodesh has that status because it's built will cover Torah. What the poskim point out is that's true, but by the silver on top and the breastplate, it's definitely will cover Torah. But we know today people have alarms on, they have chains, so it's not. Perhaps one could say the Aron Kodesh is also for Shmira, which it's good that it keeps us safe. It's different, it's safe. It's a problem in terms of keeping the status of Tashmishi Kedusha, but that's what the poskim assume. That because some, I think the Meiri writes, the Atzei Chaya, maybe you could argue, those are touching the ground and therefore it's connected to the Torah. But even today, many of the Aron Kodesh have carpeted it, so it's not even. So therefore, you have to come on to the reason of what covered Torah, something built solely for the sake of covered Torah. That's why I'm saying the mezuzah cover, even though it might not come in direct contact, but since it's made with covered Torah, covered mezuzah. So therefore we get the status of Tashmishi Kedusha, and therefore it's probably best to bury them as well.
See, the Yitzchak are actual Kedusha?
No, they're not. The Meiri writes that since it's connected to, it's a difficult shita. In terms
He says it's Guf Kedusha?
No, I don't know if he says it's good. He wants to say since it's connected to it's all like maybe it's B'chubru, like it's all one thing. Not the Chayim themselves are, but maybe it's like it's an extension. It's B'chubru L'karka, something like that. But that's what I think he's saying. I don't think he's arguing. You can't say that Atzei Chayim are Gufa Kediyah.
I think it was Rabbi Reisman that I went to Shabbos. I was in Los Angeles and I heard him speak. Rabbi Reisman,
The one in Flatbush.
So he says we've spoken about the Mikdash Ma'at, and this is all patterned after the Mikdash Ma'at with the Aron. And he said even to have a parochas in front is designated. So you're just not doing something of. You're connecting it up to the Beis Hamikdash. So these are particular items that are replacements for what was we call it the Aron, like the Aron that had the luchos. It's all bad, and the parochas. And he was in the Sephardic shul. He said, but they have a curtain behind. So he said because you have to have a parochas there in front to be patterned after the parochas that was in the base. So what I want to try to say is an additional comment that this elevates it up to the level of Mikdash Ma'at. So therefore it has the mikdash, kadosh. So there's kedusha to those things that are patterned after the mikdash. Also have some sort of kedusha. Not simply that it houses a sefer Torah, and the sefer Torah has kedusha, but that particular box, once you designate it for the Torahs, and you have all those elements have a kedusha.
Yeah, the Gemara.
Tashmishi. So you can say the parochas is only Tashmishi to Tashmishi because it's third removed. No, because it's designated as parochas patterned after the mikdash.
So what about the near time? It's the Kavod HaTorah. It doesn't touch, but it's also the same
there
thing.
There may be some element to this, according to what I'm saying. It may be an element
that's also
patterned after.
I would. What I'm saying is but that doesn't mean we do everything. We'll cover that Torah. But something direct, like a mezuzah cover. We're saying something that's on the Sefer Torah, except it's not touching directly. That's what we're talking about. A lot of things we do are covered. Doesn't mean that. That's the Gemara Megillah that quotes the pasuk in Yecheskel, "V'havel mikdash ma'at," that the Beis HaKnesses and the Batei Midrashos in Bavel all have the status of a mikdash ma'at. And it's a machlokas Rishonim whether the kedusha in the Beis HaKnesses, has a din. Is it a din daraisa or a din d'rabbanan? But that's the pasuk in Yecheskel. So in fact, that's what. So that's the issue of the Aron Kodesh. In fact, it's an interesting discussion. What about? You had a question?
So a brand new covering before it's actually put on a Torah, does that have a status of Kedusha?
No, but it has, that gets into Hazmana Milsa on that, but until you actually use it, in theory, it wouldn't take on wouldn't take on the status of Tashmishi Kedusha in terms of.
Even though it was actually built for that function.
Well, it's a discussion.
Even made for that function.
Right, so that's a discussion that, in terms of, it has Mana Milsa, and they go into at what point it does take on. But Pashas, we're talking about when you're actually using it. But it could be, if it's miyachid for you, if it has, it might take on a certain level of kedusha. Probably, if it hasn't been used yet, so it's hard to say, it's Tashmishi Kedusha, until, because it never came in contact. Like the near Tamid, it's not, we wouldn't say it. What about the Svarim shranks? You put Svarim Aguf HaKedusha.
The what?
The Svarim shelves.
Oh.
I guess, right, I used to come, in Brooklyn, Frankels used to sell Svarim shranks. I guess it's a Yiddish word for shelves, I don't know.
Shunks?
Shunks, shranks, either way. Maybe they changed. I think it was SHRANK, or either way. But so the question, so what do you put this? So what is the status? In fact, that's what I was wondering. They used to say, Frankel's, lifetime guarantee. So and they had two types. I remember one time both of them are lifetime guarantee, but one's guaranteed never even to bend. One will bend but not break. So I was thinking maybe his Frankel's going like the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan paskins that Svarim shelves have a status of Tashmishi Kedusha, and they have to be Nigvarim. You can't throw out a Svarim. Bookshelf, yeah. Bookshelf used for Svarim. However, it doesn't seem to be the minig. I haven't seen anyone who. It's one thing we all go into shul, we drop off shemer. It'll be a little more conspicuous leaving your bookshelf in the middle of the shul.
Lifetime guarantee is when sometimes the person passes away, they use that to make his coffin out of it. So
like the dining room table used to be a minig in Italy. So they point out that no, there's some film they used to take the dining room, they buried them because that was the chesed they did. There's a whole family in Italy where they took
Jewish
them.
Italy or just
Jewish.
It's Tashmishi Mitzvah.
Yeah. So
because when you pass away, the Torah and your chesed Gemilas Chasadim goes before you, so you're surrounded by the chesed of the table.
Yeah, so we rely on the Mishnah Brura who says no, that since most Svarim have like ruach, they have binders, we have covers on ours, so therefore we'll make all that we don't throw them out. But that's a machlokes Aruch HaShulchan Mishnah Brura. So therefore, if you go with Frankel, you don't have to worry about it. I actually still have the ones I brought over from New York. I still have the same ones. And if they broke, they probably broke because of the movers, probably not because of the shelves. But either way, so getting back, so the Binyatin asked, "My nafkimin, and what's the difference? Whether the shivrei luchos were put put in together with the same luchos, with the luchos shniyos, so they've had or they were put into a separate aron." So the Binyatin, you know what the nafkamin is? The nafkamin is, I wouldn't say it's a common question, but it's certainly not an uncommon one. There comes up a person's reading, you're reading Kriyas Torah, and all of a sudden you find a mistake in the Torah, and then you have to put back, so it's a puzzle Sefer Torah now, it could be fixed, or maybe it can't be fixed, but it doesn't make a difference. It's a puzzle Sefer Torah, and you want to take out the new Sefer Torah. The question is, you want to put a puzzle Sefer Torah back into the Aram Kodesh or not? So the Binyan Tzion says it depends on this Shaila. What happened to the Shivrei Luchos? If the Shivrei Luchos are put into why were they put into their own Aron? Because they weren't allowed to be put into the Aron. So we have a principle, Malin B'Kodesh Ve'imo Ridin. We always go up in Kedusha, we don't go down. Like we put on talis first and now it's filling. So in fact, that's why the Mishnah Brura screams against the minig on Simchas Torah. People take out all the Torahs, that's a good thing. But what other people do, some people take a candle that was lit, or they take a sefer, they put it in, they feel bad, the Aron Kodesh is only, they want to put something in. He says, it's a terrible minhag, it's Malin B'Kodesh Ve'imo Ridin, you can't put anything else into the Aron Kodesh. So the Binyan says, if you assume that Shivrei Luchos had their own ark, because they weren't allowed to be put together with the Luchos, if they were put together, so since we paskin the Shivrei Luchos are put together with the Luchos, so we paskin that one could put the Puzzle Sefer Torah back into the Aron Kodesh? How do we know? So the Gemara tells us that Tashmishi Kedusha Nigvarim, Tashmishi Mitzvah Nizraka, but the Gemara never explains why.
The whole problem is Malan B'Kodesh. So why on the Bima can you put the Torah on it? Why can you put a Siddur on it afterwards?
No, but that's only Tashmishi Kedusha. In terms of, so in general, there are poskim who talk about, there is actually, that some say you shouldn't learn, I guess maybe for a city, you shouldn't put a sefer down on top of I think the Bima where they put the sefer Torah, there are poskim who say that you shouldn't, many have a minig in the Beis HaMedrash, they put the sefer on top. So maybe others, I guess, to be make assume it's only done by cry, it's only done a couple, it's not used, since it's basically used for davening and not, so therefore wouldn't take on.
Or the tzorich, that you have.
Exactly, but also, but there are your points. Well, there are poskim who are machmer. You're right. You shouldn't, if a sefer Torah goes in, you shouldn't use it for a siddur or.
Why would it be any different than the Aron?
No, because the Aron is kavua. That's where the sefer. Here it's not made for the sefer. We're just using the sefer Torah to put it on there once in a while.
The Bima is not made for sefer Torah.
No, I mean it's made. Again, it depends what the bim is made for. If it's made for in different Beis HaMedrash, if it's made for davening or if it's made it depends what it's made for. In theory, the bim we're talking about is because it used to be the classical bim in a shul. They just used it on Shabbos. You go ahead and you use it, but I'm talking about something where you're using the whole week.
I mean, even if you say it's made for davening and it's made for sefer Torah, I would say they are in the same thing. Yeah, it's made for sefer Torah, and once a year when you take all them out, when they make it, if that's the minhag, then they would know to put stuff in it.
No, but why should you put? There's no need to put it in. He was saying it's a minhag shtar. There's a reason. It's a tzarach using the bimah, so then you can make the distinction. So they point out that the Gemara never tells us why. The Gemara just tells us the klal, and that never gives us the reason why something has kedusha. So Rav Chaim Volozhin explains, and the Rav Salvation explains as well, that we know we have a mitzvah in the Torah. Actually, we discussed a couple of weeks ago on Zayin Adar. Kavar tikbareno bayom mahu. It's a mitzvah daraisa. Kfura discussion, different opinions in the Gemara Sanhedrin. We pass in Kfura's daraisa. So Rav Chaim Volozhin, what's the philosophy? Why is there a chi of Kfura? So Rav Chaim Volozhin says the reason why there's a chi of Kfura on a Jew and not a chi of Kfura on a guy. A guy can be cremated, or you want to use a mausoleum. There's only a chi of Kfura on a Jew. Why? Because that a Jew becomes a guf HaKedusha. That's the Gemara in Nida. The Gemara in Nida tells us in Chazal that every Jew is taught Kol Torah Kula before they're born. And when they come out, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, they live a little patchy and you forget everything. So the difference isn't that we have 613 mitzvahs and the Goyim have 7. You don't get Kedusha through mitzvahs, you get Kedusha through Torah. So every Jew, even if they won't learn anything afterwards, of course. But of course, you should be learning after you come out, but you come out as a guf Kedusha. By a Jew learning Torah, that's why they say over when, even though there's a minhag among Ashkenaz not to kiss people in a shul, I think in Chabadka they say, the Altos Chabadka, I think Rav Aaron Kala fell asleep one night, probably 2 in the morning, whatever, and he gave him a little kiss on the cheek, on the forehead. So, what about the minhag? So he says it's Nishika Sefer Torah. You're allowed to kiss a Sefer Torah in shul. It's actually a Seforno. I think that when Moshe kissed Aaron or something, it's like kissing a Sefer Torah. He became a guf HaKedusha. You're a walking Sefer Torah, so therefore that's why. So that's what the Rav explained. Where does the whole Mishkan get its Kedusha from? It's called the Mishkan HaEdus. It's only because the Aron Kodesh house the Luchos. That's what gave the Kedusha to the whole Mishkan. And that's why, in fact, Shlomo HaMelech knew b'Nevuah that the Beis HaMikdash won't last forever, and therefore he had a build. As the discussion is starting to discuss what happened to the Luchas by whether Yosef went down and they hit him in the place where Shlomo Melech built. So that's the way the Rav is working, and after that gave the Kedusha will always remain in the Makom HaMikdash. But it's Torah that gives the Kedusha. That's why the Gemara tells us in Brachas, Daf Hey, Hizaru b'zakein sheshachach limudo machmas onzo. Be very careful how you treat a Talmud Chacham, a zakein, who forgot his learning because of onus. Today Alzheimer's. Because why? Because just like the Shivrei Luchos were put into the Luchos, that's what the Meiri elaborates, so to a Talmud Chacham who forgot his learning, he's like the Shivrei Luchos, and therefore you have to be very careful to treat a Talmud Chacham who lost his learning just like the Shivrei Luchos, because the Shivrei Luchos, as we point out, that even though that they're broken, they still have the same Kedusha. So the fact that the Sefer Torah became puzzle, and you can't use it for Kriyas Torah, we assume there's not a problem with Kodesh. It retains the same status as a Puzzle Sefer Torah. It's the same level of Kedusha. It's a Gufa Kedusha as well, and therefore you have to treat it properly as well. And that's why, and that's why, just to conclude, they point out that that's why we have every Jew has a Chi of Talmud Torah, because it's the Talmud Torah that creates a Gufa Kedusha. And even if you don't believe Chazal, I'll conclude with the psak of the IRS. It's tax season, that's why the accounts are in here. But the IRS, that's the Internal Revenue, that's the equivalent of Revenue Canada here. So they had a landmark case, I think it was Silverman versus, the case was that we know or I don't know if you know, but I certainly know, there's a clergy deduction. In Canada it's called manse, or maybe I'm mixing them up, and it's called parsonage. In the States it's called parsonage. I've experienced both, living in both areas. You could get a lot more with parsonage, by the way, but it's called parsonage of man. So basically, it's called clergy. It's a certain, you can take off different housing deductions. I'll speak to your accountant for all the details, what you can deduct and what you can't. So there's a question, what about a rabbi in yeshiva? He's teaching the students Torah. Yeah. Is he allowed to declare man? So they took it to, I don't know if it went to the Supreme Court, but it was a big case in the States years ago. I think it was Silverman versus whoever. And they went back and they studied, Judaism. They concluded, this is the IRS talking, and they did their research.
Parsonage.
And they did their research and said, you know what, Judaism is a unique religion. It's different than all other religions. All other religions, it's just the leaders that have to know what's going on, basically. I'm oversimplifying. And basically, the average layman doesn't have to know anything. He just follows whatever the priest, minister, whoever tells you, that's what you have to do. But in Judaism, everyone has a chiyuv to know Kol HaTorah Kula. Everyone has an obligation to learn. And therefore, every Rebbe is entitled to parsons, because in this religion every Jew is responsible for learning Torah. So if you don't believe Chazal, the IRS even came along, and therefore that's why it's true, and that gives us the status of the Gufa Kedusha. So those are some of the relevant issues: the breaking the luchos, the size of the Aron Kodesh, the size of the tefillah, the mezuzahs, in terms of what has the status of Tashmishi Kedusha, and what gives it. It's the learning that gives us the Gufa Kedusha. And just to conclude with the Chasim Sofer, there are three different levels of Kedusha. There's Kedushas HaMakom, like a shul, a Beis HaMikdash. There's Kedushas HaZman, like Shabbos, Yontif. And then there's, so which one has precedence? If there's a conflict between Kedushas HaMikdash, or Kedushas HaMakom, and Kedushas HaZman, which one takes precedence? So we all know, we learned the Parsha, the Smichas HaParsha is between Shabbos and the Mishkan, that Binyan HaMikdash is not Docha Shabbos. So we know Kedushas HaZman takes precedence over Kedushas HaMikdash. And we learned in last week's Parsha, as I spoke about last week in Florida, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbos, the Gemara in Yuma, better to Machal Shabbos Achas, so we know a Shabbos emergency, a Jew is obligated to desecrate Shabbos. It's not really desecrating, that's what the or Achad writes Achas Shapsos Tishmoro, it's written in plural. The two ways to keep Shabbos. Normally you keep Shabbos through Shmira Shabbos, but in case of an emergency, that's also Shmira Shabbos. So we know the halacha is that we push our Shabbos to save a life. So the Chasam Sofer says we see every Jew is more chashiv, is more kodesh than the Mishkan. The Mishkan's not Docha Shabbos, but every Jew is Docha Shabbos, and therefore, and where does this Kedusha come from? As Rav Chaim Volozhin explains, it comes from us studying Torah, and we become a Gufa Kedusha. And hence, as Rav Chaim Volozhin, that's what the Chiyuv Klura is based on, the fact that we become a Gufa Kedusha, and that's what all these halachas of Tashmishi Kedusha, it's Stam, as the Kutzker used to always say, that you're Stam a Yid. You know, Stam means Stam, but he says, no. Every Yid Sefer Torah Tefillah Mezuzah, you Stam a Yid, and that gives you, that's why you're a Gufa Kedusha.